They're not from Mars though, are they? They're from Mount Florida, which is so much more exotic. I think there can be no club more symbolic of what we have been through, of what Rangers have been through. There'd be no opponent club more symbolic of what we have been through than Queen's Park. That immediate post 2012 period, don't get the heavy air quotes out there, the immediate post 2012 period, having to play Queen's Park in a league game, having to go to Hampden on league business was arguably the most sobering, and yet I found it the most interesting, the most kind of exotic almost statement of where we were now. Yeah, we had to go to Brecon City. Our first ever game was a lower league club. We had to go to the beautiful Glebe Park, and just playing a Challenge Cup match as an underdog against a team from, was it the third tier of Scottish football, and we were the underdog, going there as the team from the fourth tier. But I think in terms of just what you've lived through your entire life, Queen's Park, I would never say they were a joke of a club. Their results, perhaps, a joke. Their expectations, the least of any club in Scottish League football for most of my life, because through the 20th century they staunchly refused to turn professional. They retained their amateur status. They also had the National Stadium. That was their home stadium. A quite unique and quirky set of circumstances. One of the reminders of Glasgow having been the capital of world football. I was talking to somebody online during the week, talking about how, reminded me that Real Madrid had once played Cardiff City in the European Cup Winners' Cup, the old home and away format, which meant that I was just thought, oh, well, that means Real Madrid have played Cardiff City at Ninian Park. They played them at Old Ninian Park, so Real Madrid have played at Ninian Park in the Cup Winners' Cup. They played the Super Cup match a few years back at Cardiff City's new stadium, the Cardiff City grounds, and they played the 2017 Champions League final at the Millennium Stadium in Cardiff. And that's quite a thing. And then about 2 seconds later, it occurred to me, they played the European Cup at Ibrox, Parkhead and Hampden. Glasgow rules in so many ways. It really does. And there's Queen's Park, who in the 19th century, at various points, were the greatest team in the world. And at various points were making Scotland the greatest international team in the world. The first ever international match played the first ever international match played in the world, played in planet Earth, international football as we currently know it, starts with Scotland versus England, just down the road from me. It's the Hamilton Crescent, the cricket ground down in Partick, a 0-0 draw, St Andrews Day, 1872, and all 11 Scotland players who drew 0-0 with England, the first ever international, came from Queen's Park. They all played for Queen's Park. One of them played for Clydesdale as well, but they were all Queen's Park players. And then the professional game, like you see with Glasgow City in the women's game just now, and they're holding out a lot better. Glasgow City starting in the women's game when there's a league set up, whereas Queen's Park are starting with primarily Challenge Cups, where the order of the day, they win the first, as I say, win 6 of the first 9 Scottish Cups. So it's 1874 they're winning the first Scottish Cup final, and then the League Championship comes in just less than 20 years later, but it's the 1890s that the League Championship comes in. By that point, Rangers and Celtic are, yeah, they're in there. They're not gentlemen amateurs. They're representing the working classes, as always, divide and conquer with the working classes. It's Catholics versus Protestants. It's actually working class folk against the gentlemen, the rich amateurs. But at least we make our sport our own. We start dominating it. But I see it happening kind of the other way around with Glasgow City in the women's game. They're certainly not coming from super posh areas of Britain. Glasgow City, they're holding out as Rangers and Celtic just decided to turn up, just decided they're going to start financing their women's teams, and bang, Glasgow City suddenly kind of fighting for their lives to retain their place as the top team in Scottish women's football in Glasgow. That's always where the best football's going to come from in Scotland, and they're doing it, and my admiration goes out to them. I always see a real parallel with the Queen's Park, the men's game back in the late 1800s. But when we contested the third division title, it was the third division. It was League Two. It was League Two. No, it was the third division. The third division. Aye, back in 2012-13 season, and it was Queen's Park that we ended up. It was Queen's Park slipping up that gave us the title, and then we're back at Hampden, this having to play Queen's Park in the league at Hampden, the scene of so many of our glories, so many of the years that we were just raking in, hoovering in cups, League Cups and Scottish Cups to add as little adornments to all the league titles that we're winning. And I think it will be again 2032, I think. I think around about 2032. You know my position. I think it's going to take Rangers 20 years to get over properly, fully, in every aspect of our club and every aspect of our on-field achievement, get over what happened to us in 2012. So I think it's going to be the early 2030s before we probably retain the league title again. I'm hoping we're going to win it intermittently, maybe even every second season until then. But I think it's going to be 2032 probably before we can look back and start doing all the documentaries about how James Tavernier actually was a hero, and maybe how Philippe Clement was the man who got us back on track. You don't know, there's going to be somebody. But I think they'll be talking heads, and if I'm still alive at that point in time, I'm quite happy to put myself forward to sit and go, it was when we went to, I remember we went to Queen's Park, we drew 0-0 with Montrose in the lunchtime on the Saturday, and it was humiliating. We had a chance to win the title, and it was just typical of how we all felt about being in the bottom tier of Scottish football, that we just had a 0-0 live on television, and the title was gifted to us by Queen's Park dropping points at Hampden that afternoon. Yes, folks, we're going head to head with Queen's Park, and at that point in time, and you'll have to remind people, because Queen's Park will probably be up there with Rangers and Celtic by the time 2032 comes around. They'll have exploited the demographics sitting in their doorstep, and they'll be the third force in Scottish football. They'll have won a couple of league titles, totally professional. They'll be in Europe. They'll probably get to the semi-finals of the Champions League or something like that. But you'll have to remind people that for most of the 20th century, for all of the 20th century, Queen's Park were just a team who didn't win anything. They just sat down at the bottom end of the table, refusing to go professional, and just being like getting everybody's respect, but winning nothing off nobody. And it's at that point, that was the Queen's Park that we met still in 2012, 2013 season. Andy Robertson, playing for Queen's Park, comes back to Hampden as captain of Scotland, wins the Champions League with Liverpool, stuff like that. It's a reversal of the actual Queen's Park story itself up until 2019 when they finally turned professional. But Hampden, we went there, was it the week after we were actually awarded, or actually officially became third division champions? Or was it a couple of weeks after? I can't remember, but there'd been the possibility that Rangers would play Queen's Park at Hampden towards the end of the season in a head-to-head, a title decider. And I naively thought there'd be, 35 to 50,000 at that game. And the tickets had all been bought in advance. So when we did play Queen's Park at Hampden a few weeks later, I thought it was still going to be a massive crowd, even though it was live on the television. Was it 11,000? I think it was something like 11,000 there. And I don't know if this is the embarrassment factor that we still feel just now that causes us to lash out at people like James Tavernier, because all we can do is compare him to Callum McGregor, because it's all we're getting in our face from Celtic fans. It's like, we're on a different story to Celtic, obviously. That's why we're not winning as many league titles as them by any stretch of the imagination since 2012. One of the major things we have got to do, for me it's great that we've won all three of the major domestic trophies. We've won all three, we've only won each of them once since 2012, but we've been to a European final. We have been in the Champions League group stages, don't want to talk about that, but we have been there, and that was a major hurdle as well to get back into that level. We've done all that since 2012, and I thought this season we played Celtic in the League Cup final at Hampden. There's a chance here for us to retain a trophy. That's for the first time since 2012. When I say these things, I don't mean, Sevco, the first time in your history. That's just not the case. We are the same club. We are the same club on paper. We are the same club officially. Emotionally, so much of it as well, but that emotions get twisted. Like somebody who's been through a really bad accident, somebody who's had a stroke, somebody who's had a heart attack, and there's a long, long road to recovery, and there is a wound there that won't go away. There's a psychological wound that we need to deal with, and I think we're still dealing with, and sometimes it holds us back further than we need to be held back just now. But it probably wasn't right. It probably wasn't in the plan, because if you go too fast forward, you slip back too quickly. For us to retain the League Cup the first season after we'd won it for the first time since 2012, that's too quick. If we can win the Scottish Cup this season, which we won in 2022, that can be the first time we have won a trophy for a second time since 2012, if you know what I mean. We've won all three major trophies. We won all won all the lower league titles and the Challenge Cup since 2012. I won the League Cup, the Scottish Cup, in the top flight since 2012. Maybe I'm put off by the way, maybe it's my Scottish thing. We'll get Dessers and the manager, Clement, two men born in Belgium, yesterday in the pre-match presser talking about how the Scottish Cups, it was the quickest way to a trophy. It's a very quick way to a trophy or to a final. I'm thinking that's, Queen's Park, that'll wind them up. Never mind whoever we get in the quarterfinals or the semi-finals. Kind of assuming you're going to get there. But this is what Rangers are doing just now. We are getting to 3 straight League Cup finals, and the manager's trying to get us to a second straight Scottish Cup final. Philip Clement has reached Hampden. He's reached the final of every domestic tournament in Scotland that he's played in. So I think it's true though. I think it's a chance to get back to Hampden to win the Scottish Cup at Hampden, the home venue, Queen's Park's home venue, like the venue they owned up until 2020, and they sold it to the SFA, but now they're back there using it as a home venue. There's just something. So how you doing, folks? This is we're going to talk about the real stuff. I know everybody really wants to talk about the transfer window shutting. Where's your yellow tie? It's slam. Remember, it's a window. It always slams shut, doesn't it? It does always slam shut. And you want to talk about on Friday the European squad coming. Was that ever a thing before? The European squad? That's just suddenly become a big thing. You want to talk about all that. This is the stuff we want to get our teeth into this week, because I think a lot of us are just looking down our nose at Queen's Park coming to Ibrox, and we never ever should. To any opponent, we should never disrespect any opponent like that. But apart from anything else, you get your ass kicked. You need to watch yourself. It'd be a humiliation. It'd be a massive fly in the ointment of this nascent revival under Philip Clement this season. This nascent revival for this team. We're starting to feel a bit better about ourselves in 2025 than we were doing at the tail end of 2024. So we need to be on it, and we do not recover well. We do not recover well from breaks, from any kind of break. Rangers, been playing so many games, and that's testimony to the manager. Playing so many games up until last week. This midweek we've had off is vacant. The team get a chance to stop. Talk about the kind of scar tissue, the flashbacks to what that was like under Steven Gerrard, who eventually wins us the title, of course. But various Rangers managers since 2012, the last thing we need is a break. This season, Rangers international breaks have been an absolute anathema for us. Absolutely terrible. We lost at Rugby Park after an international break, didn't we? I think the only game we won after the international break in the first half of the year was when we beat Dundee United at Tannadice 1-0, early Tom Lawrence goal. A comfortable performance, but it was totally uncomfortable. But I think in terms of shots on target, etc., we won the game quite well in the end, but it wasn't a comfortable watch. It wasn't a fantastic performance. And Rangers, under Gerrard, would be doing well, going up to the New Year period, get into the winter break, we'd probably get a victory over Celtic in the derby. Here we go, push on. We're favourites for the title, and we would start the second half of the season after the winter break. We would come back, and it would be a few friendlies against, Lokomotiv Tashkent or something in Dubai, and then we would have a lower league team at Ibrox in the Scottish Cup. That's just all the way it worked. Stirling Albion under Gio as well, under Michael Beale, Stirling Albion, Queen of the South. Stranraer, something like that, and we'd beat them quite comfortably, but not as comfortably as you would have liked. And you go, okay, they're just warming up again, but then we'd never really quite get going. So we've only had a week off, and we've already had our opening game in the Scottish Cup against a properly non-league side, a proper lower league side, non-league Highland League Fraserburgh, cuffed them 5-0. Queen's Park Championship, middle of the Championship. I'm still a bit wary. I want us to go out tomorrow and see how we deal with having time off and a lot more players back fit. This team seems to do better when the odds are against them. That's another charge that's been made against Rangers in these years of recovery from 2012. That they can't just go out and destroy teams that they're supposed to destroy. We've beat Ross County 6-0 and 4-0 at Ibrox this season with different teams at different parts of the season with different home stadiums. We've beaten Kilmarnock 6-0 at Ibrox. It's a bit of a myth, but there's also been plenty of games of won at home far less comfortably this season. So this is your Fat Eck. I hope Lyle Cameron's pre-contract is paraded to the fans at half-time. We had Rangers, we were playing the Royalists versus the Loyalists when we played USG. Then we went from that to Bears versus Stags, no, the Staggies, and now it's Bears versus Spiders preview pod coming to you in association with Gersnet. Gersnet didn't go out last night. Frankie's away at this moment in time on family business, so but it will be Sunday night, tomorrow night, the usual, the flagship show, 9:30 live on YouTube. It's going to be Rob hosting that one with Stuart and Ben, so that's going to be a cracking show. Plenty for the lads to talk about. Please tune into that. I'm sponsored by them, and I'm also sponsored by ScotRail, the wonderful people of ScotRail, who Saturday nights must be a nightmare for them. ScotRail staff, I think Friday nights are a nightmare for them. I know that because I've made Saturday night a nightmare for them. I'm going to come back to that. That's part of the graphics. There, I've got the cold, as you maybe can hear. You always sound this verbose. I'm like, yep. You always sound this boring. Yeah, I do. It doesn't bother me. The cold. I don't know what you did with your week off. I decided to get a cold. Kind of couldn't sleep first couple of nights. Oh my God. I mean, it was a cold. It wasn't a problem at all. But it doesn't bother. I'm quite happy to chat with you. I just know it'll make the pod even slower than it usually is. And I hope you can stand it. If not, just fast forward, because I'm always changing the subject every kind of 5 to 20 minutes on these pods. But there will be, to make up for that, there's going to be graphics this week. YouTube keep telling me, folk keep subscribing, weirdos, keep subscribing to this pod. I didn't know that was a thing. So YouTube started sending me these messages going, "I milk them all, like, get the money out of these mugs, make money out of them." I think it must be adverts and stuff. But they keep saying things like, you can get content behind a paywall. It's exclusive content that folk have got to pay for. Oh, get that. Sit and eat a packet of McCoys. I don't know what kind of charges for. Our gold members can watch my content later on, which is me actually talking about the football straight for 10 minutes. That might be an idea, just to actually stick to the point, talk about Rangers, talk about our next game, and talk about it without going into my personal history or whatever. But I need to up my game, obviously, before I'm going to start milking these for as much money as I possibly can. I think folk usually say it's so I can get the equipment, and it's a better experience for you guys if we can just finance the. I'm not going to make any improvements to this pot. It's still going to be out of sync, and all the stuff in the background is back to front. I'm still going to be as fat as anything. It's just so I can go on holiday. I just want you to pay for my holidays and stuff like that. So I'm going to start trying to make money. But one of the things I will do is it's quite appropriate actually playing Queen's Park. They just went professional for being totally amateur. I'm going to stay totally amateur in my outlook and my efforts, and the content and the professionalism will just be completely absent in terms of how to actually make it work. But I'll just go professional, start charging you money. I've got graphics. I thought one thing I will do is I've got to move into the 21st century here, a bit like Queen's Park. There's going to be graphics coming up, and the ScotRail thing, it alludes to that. So we'll park that just now. My name is not Axel Anderson, the 12-year-old who formed Viking, or he was the chairman of the committee of children who formed Vikingur of Reykjavik, Iceland, in 1908. Have you seen they're in they're in the knockout playoff round, the last 16, which is actually the last 24, in the Conference League. They're just starting out. It's the first time first Icelandic club ever to go post Christmas in European football, and because that still applies, the Conference League, it was only 6 group games they all played in the Conference League, so that stopped before Christmas, so it still means the same thing. I know there's plenty of clubs went post Christmas in the Champions League and the Europa League this season, but that's just because the group stage extended. It was 8 games and it extended at the end of January. It's the same connotation versus denotation, but for them at Vikingur it's both. Fantastic achievement. The ground, it looks like the Warout Stadium. Is it Warout Stadium in Grangemouth? It's just like one big stand or 2 stands opposite each other, and then it's a whole lot of grass, grass banking in the park. It's a sportsplatz, as the Germans would call it. But I think the most they can get in there is 1,200 people, and they're in the knockout stages of European competition. Viking, who have been going on and on about how there's all these new non-league clubs in Scotland that are basically, it's a bunch of parents formed them for kids, to give their kids somewhere to play football, and then you just think, what the hell, when the kids are starting to grow up and getting older, they still want to play football, let's just enter the pyramid system, and away they go. Well, Viking, who are in Iceland, they were actually formed by the children themselves in 1908, it has to be said. They're probably, but how proud will Axel Andersson be now watching the latest Viking who are getting themselves into the old knockout stages of the Conference League. So well played. I just feel a kind of a brotherhood, a fraternity with other clubs who are doing really well in European competition. It isn't the Champions League. My name isn't Axel Andersson. My name's Alec Anderson. Now Ziggy played for time, jiving us that we were voodoo. The kids were all crass. He was the nass with God-given ass. He took it all too far, but boy, could he play guitar. And I'm talking to you at the end of a week in which Rangers did zilch on the transfer front. Got nobody in through the door other than Rafael Fernandez, who combined some fantastic names there. Rafael Fernandez, I mean, just also, but he's not even made it into the European squad. His poor Rafael, an aspiring young Portuguese centre half who's not really made his bones yet. And we got Lyle Cameron of Dundee on a pre-contract, so he's not signing until, he's not actually joining us until the summer, but he has signed on. And the manager in yesterday's presser confirmed that he wasn't happy with that he wanted more business done. Brendan Rodgers said the same for Celtic, so that's how we always judge ourselves. Brendan Rodgers wasn't happy that they didn't get him to replace Furuhashi in their winter transfer business. So as long as Celtic are as unhappy as us, then everything's absolutely fine. Lyle Cameron, attacking midfielder, Dundee, 22-year-old. It was only October, I think, that he turned 22. Born in Dundee, a wonderful city. Been up there recently, having some cracking nights out there, as I was describing to you in great detail. And he, he's 22 years old. He played. They farmed him out to. He made his debut in 2019. Was it against Wraith Rovers? I've been reading the same websites as you guys. And they farmed him out to Peterhead and Montrose, I think. Peterhead a couple of times. He got cracking reports there. His application apparently was fantastic. He really didn't feel in any way above that level of football as young men who started off at a bigger club tend to do. So he works hard. He's got a great attitude. He's got 27 goals in 109 appearances. 27 goals in 109 appearances for Dundee, a club who are, I think, a third bottom now in the SPFL Premiership. So, if he's doing that in a team that tends to struggle, there's a good chance he should improve at Rangers. 12 appearances for the Scotland under-21s, and he scored 2 goals. I didn't realise at the time. I've actually seen him. I was at one of the games back in March where we beat Kazakhstan 4-1 at the Euros qualifiers. Back in March, beat Kazakhstan 4-1 at Paisley at St Mirren's ground. I went along to that one midweek. Good pie that I had in that one. And Lyle Cameron scored in that game. I remember watching Leon King playing played in the defence, but at centre half for Scotland that night. But I don't remember a single thing about Lyle Cameron. But he must have been good. Scoring at that level is good enough for a man of that age. He scored in the epic 5-3 win over Queen's Park. More of which in the second half of the show when we discuss tomorrow's game in the Scottish Cup. But he scored in that 5-3 win. It was 3 each at half time at Oakle View when it was Queen's Park versus Dundee at the end of 2022-2023. That's a wee rhyme. That season, the end of the regular season. It was on Friday night. It was live on BBC Scotland. I watched it. It was sensational. I was wanting Queen's Park to win. Just to see Queen's Park back in the top flight, I need to be careful how enthusiastic I get about Queen's Park ahead of tomorrow. Could come back to bite me. But it was 3 each at half time, and then they came out in the second half. Dundee stepped up, scored a couple of goals to win the game 5-3, and Lyle Cameron scored one of those goals that got Dundee back into top flight. So he's a player. He's heavily involved in the business end of everything good that Dundee have done over the last couple of seasons under Tony Docherty. Naylock Aberdeen, they couldn't get hold of him. He wanted to come to us instead, but of course we weren't able to do the business and get him, like Glenn Kamara, get it over the lintel, get it over the line, get him through the door before. He's no here now. He's no coming to the summer. We didn't get him signed. We didn't make anything that was going any kind of deal. We don't have the money to even pull forward a pre-contract signing to get him in for January rather than having to wait until the summer, until the new season. And the manager did. The manager was phrasing it with the kind of second person plural pronoun. We're unhappy at the business we've done. But I thought it was really interesting. A lot of you will have noted that as well. That in the interview with Dessers was the player. Cyril Dessers, the player put forward yesterday by Rangers ahead of this game for the press duties, and they were asking Cyril about the fact that, was it 9 teams or something were supposed to have made inquiries through his agent. He's brilliant, Cyril Dessers. He's just so phlegmatic. He's so experienced. He's so mature, and he's so articulate in a second language that he's just saying, yeah, well, these things happen. I'm not getting picked for the team in the early part of January. Then, other teams are going to come in and say, does that mean he wants to leave? And then when I'm getting a game by the end of the month and starting to score goals again, then obviously that makes it less likely that I'm going to leave. I'm so glad he's staying. I really am glad that Cyril Dessers is staying with us till it'll probably just be to the end of the season. I can't see him staying next season as well, but you never know. But I'm so glad he's staying. But he said, yeah, this is just what happens. When he was asked, did you discuss this with the manager? Discuss it with Neil Coppin. He discussed it with Niels Coppin, our technical director, or footballing director. And he said, yeah, it was discussed with that. He says, but it's saying how teams coming in and talking to my agent is different from them actually talking to me, actually getting to the stage where I'm negotiating, leaving the club, and I wanted to stay. And I think after the treatment he's been given, I don't think any Rangers supporters are going to have any problem with him having his agent inquire into other opportunities where he's getting hounded by the Rangers support at times. But he said, it was asked by somebody in the press room, I don't know who, sorry, did you discuss it with the manager? Did you discuss it with Philip Clement, the fact if you were going to be leaving or staying? No. I don't know if that was it. It was quite a firm no, quite a kind of, that's the end of that conversation. But was it a kind of slightly overly dramatic to leave that hanging in the air that manager doesn't talk to me about my future? I've got a problem with Philip Clement. He won't talk to me about where I'm going. I felt as if it was more a kind of, that's just not how it operates. And it might be how it doesn't work like that on the continent either. He's got vast experience of playing in the Netherlands, Belgium, Italy. Right, that's not how it works in this continental model, which I think we are currently obviously trying to adopt. Director of football, negotiating all the transfer business basically, in association with, in consultation with the manager, which would be like the head coach, I think, on the continent. Even in I remember this football, voteball, Gunter Netzer talking about him being the manager of Hamburg, negotiating stuff with Kevin Keegan to make Kevin Keegan stay at Hamburg, and then talking about how he was manager of Hamburg when they won the European Cup in 1983, beating Juventus in the final 1-0 in Athens. Felix Magath scoring the only goal of the game, and I'm sitting going, but I thought it was Ernst Happel, because it was a big thing that Ernst Happel had won the European Cup with 2 different clubs, one at Feyenoord in 1970 and one but that was because in Germany the manager was like the general manager, business manager. That's what Gunter Netzer was doing, and Ernst Happel was the coach, the chief coach, the head coach, the top man. But the equivalent role that we've got for the manager here just now, and we're changing it to that kind of continental model, and that's why Philip Clement is just giving it every time. He's stonewalling any transfer discussions from the media with, you talk to Patrick Stewart about our finances, you talk to Niels Coppin about what's happening in terms of targets, what players we're going to be selling, what players we're going to be buying. And the media are getting pissed off with it. Well, can you give us their phone number, as somebody said last week, because they're not coming out and talking to the media as often as the media would like. But he's laying it down that this is the model, and I think it's a case that the manager is just basically taking the players he's given and doing what he can with them. And you see Philip Clement talking to everybody, talking to the player. Every time somebody gets substituted, it gets explained to them. It really goes in there. You see guys sometimes come off the park, I've done my bit, I'm quite happy to get subbed after an hour, just want to go and sit down. But he gets a hold of them and he explains to them what they did right, what they did wrong, why they're getting subbed off. Just really briefly, and you imagine he really debriefs them the next day in training or whatever. And I think I make a joke about it, but we see him doing that with managers as well, opposition managers. at the end of the games. I've talked about how it's borderline embarrassing at times. The length of time that Philip Clement will hold on to the neck, mid-hug of an opposition manager, at the end of a game, in Scotland in particular, like he's trying to build up relationships. I thought he's probably just trying to build up relationships because I think he's here for the long term. Clement wants to be here for the long term, and I think we see in what we've got with Lyle Cameron and the way Tony Docherty. I know he was just as effusive about McGowan going to Celtic, Tony Docherty. And this is realistic about it. But I think you see in the way Tony Docherty is talking about Lyle Cameron, how he'll be great for Dundee for the rest of the season. He's got no doubt about his professionalism. That relationship that Clement is building up there. He knows Tony Docherty will look after what is now our player until the end of the season. He's building up relationships in Scotland as Clement, and we're starting to see some of the benefits of it. I know we want to be signing, big name players all the time. Those days are over. Until that can happen again, until we've got the finances to do that again, it's great to see that he's working. You can see Clement actually working at getting the best out what we can get through the door, and it's sobering, but I find it quite. I don't want to support anybody else. I'm quite enjoying what Rangers are doing just now. It's not as if we don't have any entertaining players or spectacular players who are worth tens of millions. So I'm really enjoying supporting Rangers just now. And details first of all, we've also got Rafael Fernandes, of course. He came in as well, and just a young Portuguese centre half, very promising, but we've only seen him very, very briefly so far. Hopefully he'll come on to a game out over the course of the season. Well, with Alec Lowry over the course of the winter transfer window, Alec Lowry went out early doors in the winter transfer window, sold to Wycombe Wanderers in League One, and I was glad that was over. The Alec Lowry thing just being used as a weapon in these arguments against the manager anytime anything went wrong in a Rangers first team match. Well, why is he not getting Lowry in? We should get Lowry in, and I don't know where this came from. We saw Alec Lowry all too intermittently scored a couple of lovely against Stirling Albion in the cup game that had you get injured. Was it that game? Anyway, he definitely scored against Hearts at Tynecastle in the game before we were in Seville for the Europa League final when we played the kids against Hearts and gubbed them 3-1. Showing what their youth teams can do, the level their youth team are at over the past few years. But it was he never come out, and it's like 2 or 3 different managers have never brought Alec Lowry through into the first team. It's if the managers aren't seeing it, if the managers, most of who have been struggling to save their job, the last 2 or 3 Rangers managers at certain points, if they're not bringing him into the team to save their necks, then it's obviously not. He's obviously not coming up to scratch. It looks fantastic for the B team, but similarly, it's a lot of the chat this week is how Clinton and Ciala didn't look particularly brilliant for the B team, just looked quite ordinary, and then he's come into the first team and he's doing the business. We can't see it. Professional football coaches and managers do see it. And Clinton and Ciala come in, and he's yet to prove himself properly. He's only had a run of a few weeks, and he's done himself proud, Clinton and Ciala, and he's been increasingly good to watch, but he's still massively, most of his career is still a prospect at this moment in time. But it's good to see. It's good to see him doing so well. But just how a player is playing for the B team, I think I've been to see. Like we also sold Zach Lovelace, for example. Zach Lovelace. Tuesday night, I am watching Pointless, and there's one of the rounds of questions was all on Lord Byron, poet, obviously, and the only one I didn't get right because I'm a genius was about his daughter, his only legitimate daughter, and how she'd invented the computer. Basically, I had no idea what this. And her name was Ada Lovelace. You're supposed to guess the names, and it was Ada Lovelace. And I thought, we just lost Zach Lovelace yesterday. That's a coincidence. But Ada Lovelace, she nearly invented the computer. But Zach Lovelace, I saw him playing maybe 4 or 5 times for the B team, and he was always good. And you can see he's maybe better and one of the better performers in the B team, but I never saw anything that made me think he's head and shoulders above the rest. Get him in that first team straight away. But I think we saw that all the time with Alec Lowry playing for the B team. He's head and shoulders above the rest. Get him in that first team, and then it wouldn't work. And then the best thing Zach Lovelace has done for me in his whole time at Rangers was that ball we played to Dessers at Tannadice for the 3rd goal that we scored up there recently. That was the first real sign for me that he had proper potential. He's had a lot of injury problems, none more so. An absolute shame, total sin, man. Felt so sorry for him when he came on against St Mirren under Steve Davis last season, and it's like gets injured straight away. where he's plainly doing quite well. But real hard worker. He didn't shirk it. That's one thing for sure. With Zach Lovelace, like he came on in the game against Fraserburgh recently, and it wasn't he started that game against Fraserburgh in the Scottish Cup and didn't shine at all. I didn't think that day. It's difficult when there's a few other kind of second choice players in the team to do that, but we had a fairly decent squad out against Fraserburgh for that game. He needs more time than that probably, but he's off to Millwall, and I'm neither up nor down about it. All the very best to the young man. I really hope he becomes a star, and we've got some sort of clause in the deal that lets us benefit from him becoming a star. A lot of kids, proper kids, getting loaned out this week, but the standout ones, the names you recognise, not this week, this transfer window, Adam Devine getting loaned out to Queen's Park. It's all championship clubs. Archie Stevens, he goes out to Dunfermline. Robbie Fraser, who's a bit more first team action, and maybe we need fullbacks, Adam Devine as well, I don't know. He goes to Livingston, and Cole McKinnon is off to Ayr United. It's all to the end of the season. For me, it's with the B team no longer playing proper competitive football in a proper league. It decided that the B League, the Lowland League, wasn't a proper league for it. And I think there's a kind of school of thought that says, I get them out to real teams where no Rangers teams that are dominating every week, get them out to teams where they've got to earn their crust. Teams that are, you're basically saying put them out to a bad team, and I think at bad teams you pick up bad habits. I think if these players are getting loaned out to other clubs, it's the beginning of the end for them. I think even though we don't have the B team playing regular games just now, the Colts only involved in sporadic cup competitions and kind of painful friendlies, I still think that somebody like Philip Clement would want, like Bailey Rice and Findlay, Curtis, they are maybe been brought in because needs must, because we've got, and there's this whole thing about you've got to have homegrown players, European squads, etc. But also we've just got so many injuries to our first team regulars that's maybe by necessity. But I think it also speaks to the manager saying, yeah, these players have got something that I can use. I think you want to have players in your system. You want your B team playing the same system as you, so that players are at least strategically and tactically ready when they come into the first team and have to get drafted into the first team if we need them at all. They know how the first team plays. They know what their duties will be within a game, within set plays, etc. But I think the manager would also want them being schooled in the Rangers way, being hothoused, being in-house basically. And it's, I think when they go out on loan, that's the beginning of the end for me. Not always the case, but I think there's a level of doubt. We've tested, Adam Devine's had first team football, Robbie Fraser, a bit of it as well, Cole McKinnon, Archie Stevens, a taste for Cole McKinnon really. It's not going to happen as far as the manager's concerned. That's how I see it. These boys will come back, but perhaps go on to somewhere else. I hope that's not. I hope they all succeed and become Rangers stars and shut me up. I'll enjoy watching that. But I feel as if that's you're being Bailey Rice, Finlay Curtis. These are the guys who are going to go somewhere as far as the manager's concerned. Paul, Incio, etc. But we don't have anybody. We'll basically get one signing and one pre-contract for the winter transfer window. So what does that mean about the manager? What does that mean about the entire transfer strategy? It's quite complicated. It's quite complex, of course, talking about transfers and strategies and how the clubs plan to move ahead. So this is where the graphs come in. I've got the animated stuff, the graphics. I'm just going to just pop that up just now for you if you're ready for it. That's the graphics here. Now that says, you can see at the top, it says Glasgow Central Station. Then you get Paisley, Gilmer Street. There's various other states like Glengarnock, Dalry, Johnston as well. But I'm missing them all out because you get into Coinnin, and in the business end, after Coinnin, you get Stevenson, Saltcoats, Ardrossan, South Beach. Now you see that graphic there, that house, that is me staying in Ardrossan when I still stayed in Ardrossan. So that's where I'm wanting to get off. That's my home station, Ardrossan, South Beach. And then you go West Kilbride, Fairley and Largs. And that's what I'm doing there. That graphic is basically showing you the Glasgow Central to the Glasgow to Largs line and the Ayrshire coastlines for ScotRail. And I say on a Saturday and a Friday, these are absolute nightmares for ScotRail staff because it's full of drunk idiots like me. And if you go back to probably about 1989, 1990, I would say, So I am 20 to 21 years old. I've been working in Glasgow. I hate my job. I hate my life, basically, professionally. I don't know what it is I want to do. I wish I'd never left school. I'm going to have to go back. What a prospect that is, to go back and try and get hires at night school and then go to uni and stuff. It's going to take forever. But that's what's going to have to happen. In the meantime, I just still loved coming from Drossen, Hicktown, and I'm working in Glasgow all through the week. Friday night in Glasgow, straight out for work with other like-minded, depressed young people like myself, and we're hitting the big smoke. It's great fun. You get absolutely gassed, and you're knackered for a full week of early mornings to get yourself up to Glasgow to work. So a lot of my cousin as well, he stayed in Glengarnock, and he would do the same thing. He was at the same age as me. You hear the stories, you get pissed. You get the last train home, it was 20 past 11, I think it was the last train to Largs. It probably still is, just I've not done it for years. And you would fall asleep drunk, and you'd wake up in Largs. You'd completely missed your stop, and you'd have to get a taxi home. It was just a final killer. Or, as I done once, walk home, just sober up on the way, absolutely mental, no money or anything. The days before mobile phones, and the day before your mum and dad would come and pick you up, like, oh, you're pissed, it's your fault, you're walking. Still staying with my folks here. But what happens one night is I'm going down, back down the road on the last train, pissed at my skull, Friday night. It's a 20-year-old, so you're kind of stupid and aggressive, and just aggression that way you are when you're a young man, when you're totally confused about the world, and you're worrying that you're not hard enough, and etc. like that. So I need the graph to explain the complicated situation, because what's happened is I've got completely pissed, I've just blacked out, and I've been woken up in Largs, but not by the train, the ticket guy going, mate, this is Largs, you have to get off. But they must have been taking pity on me, and they just woke me up because they were heading back up. The ScotRail staff are heading back home. The train's got to go back, I assume, to Glasgow, but it's no in service, so to speak. So it's just ScotRail staff, and it must have been staff from Largs Station, and as well as the driver and the ticket guy and that are heading back up various stations in the way back up to Glasgow. So the guy wakes me up, and he says, "Where are you going, son?" And I'm like, "Go to Drossen. What's it got to do with you, basically? You've checked my ticket already." And instead of arguing with me, just like, it's just a pissed young idiot, I'm not going to, right? He says, "Right, that's fine." And I'm like, "Oh, you're damn right, it'll be fine." Because I think I'm still, at Paisley, basically. I think I'm still on my way to a Drossen on the initial journey. And I pass out again. And what happens is he's then got all his mates now, all the other guys that have been working at ScotRail and are getting a lift home. They're all sitting together right next to me. And it must have been as it was coming into Ardrossan South Beach. So they're waking me up. This is in the return journey. They're specifically stopping the train for me to let me off and do me a massive favour. But the automatic message that comes up, the woman, we're now approaching such and such. The next station will be. So I've woke up, they're shouting at me, and I've come out my drunken stupor just in time to hear the woman saying, I miss it. I don't hear the bit where she goes, we're now approaching Ardrossan South Beach. I just wake up and I hear, the next stop will be Saltcoats. And as far as I'm concerned, because I'm drunk, so I'm always right, I haven't done anything wrong. I must be just leaving Stevenson to hit Saltcoats on the way down. So these guys are going, get off, that's you. I'm like, aye, right, fuck, oh no, you try to wind me up. Next stop, Saltcoats. No, aye, it is, because we're going, no, this is you. And I don't look out the window. I don't even look out the window to see that I'm at Ardrossan South Beach, to see the station that I want. I'm just, I'm fronting up to these, older guys who are ganging up on me for some reason. And they're like, oh, yeah, fucking clown. I'm no, fuck you. And I go back, I just basically pass it for a second again. And so it's then, we're now approaching Saltcoats, And I'm like, oh, there, see, Saltcoats, you were going to make me get off the train early. And they're all just like, oh no, I don't even realise that I'm going backwards, that I'm going into the wrong side at Saltcoats station, that the train's heading backwards. I'm just like, I must never have heard the bit that said next stop Stevenson, but I just was like, next stop's Ardrossan South Beach. So then the doors open, they stop at Stevenson, the doors open, and they're obviously just giving it, well, he thinks he's got to get off here, we're going to have to get him off the train at some point. And they're going, that's you, on you go. And I'm like, aye, Rooney's, aye, I'm abusing these guys. And I step outside, and it's Stevenson, and I'm like, what the how's this? Why am I in Stevenson? I'm expecting it to be Ardrossan. I've basically gone completely the wrong way. And as the train went past, they're all like, give me the Vickies and laughing at me out the window. And quite right as well. I don't know how I got home. Did I walk? Was it a taxi? I don't know. But basically, that is Philippe Clement and our attitude towards Philippe Clement and Niels Coppen, I would imagine. I think it's going to be shown up to be us being completely ungrateful and abusive towards a manager who is doing whatever the hell he can to get us, but and is working minor miracles in getting us in the top 8 of the Europa League and to be comfortably in second place. That's Rangers never want to be comfortably in second place because we are 13 points behind Celtic in the SPFL. It's not even a race, it's not even an SPFL title race, it's just in the SPFL Premiership table. But we're 16 points in front of the teams in third. So that's, I think, for the state we are in, the chairman, the outgoing chairman, John Bennett, saying back in the summertime that the player trading model was a joke, basically it just hadn't worked at all. And he was talking about how Philippe Clement was all in, and he'd looked at and how Philippe Clement had told him there's so much more work needing to be done here than we realise, and Clement has been telling us this. How come he got a new contract? Because we had completely done him over. The job was so much more involved than he realised when he came here in the October of last season. So to keep him there, I think we were going to have to promise him that we would keep him there. And I think he's more interested not in being recompensed for his inconvenience. I think it's because he wants the same commitment from us that he's willing to give, that he's going to fix this long term. I think he's enjoying the project, and it is a project. And in between times, what he's getting out of us is, I find it miraculous. But what about the injuries? He was supposed to sort the injuries. Really interesting. Was it yesterday, the day before, the Rangers Review? Always a good listen. The Rangers Review, first thing in the morning, the free show they put out. I think it was Joshua Barry was talking about the fact that these players, this squad, it's been 4 different managers, not for all these players, because we're getting rid of all these. We wanted rid of all these losers. We wanted rid of Goldson and Kent and Morelos and Ryan Jack and Kamara Roof, drains on this. Horrible stuff being said about Rangers players who had brought us a league title and got us to a European final, but we did get rid of them. That's what you wanted. You didn't put in the caveat, but we want to replace with better straight away, who will hit the ground running straight away. That doesn't happen that way in football anyway, but it's certainly not going to happen at Rangers at this financial point in our time. And Joshua Barry talking about how, well, there's been 4 different managers basically in 4 years for Rangers, and they're bringing in their own medical staff, their own training staff, their own methods, and completely changing it every time. There's maybe an undertow created by that. It's coming out in the injuries. For me, I think watching Clement is getting, oftentimes he will get £10 million performances out of £1 million players, £20 million performances out of £2 million players. In the bigger games, it has to be said, we're still letting ourselves down. We're getting £200,000 performances out of £2 million players away to Hibs, away to Dundee, away to Motherwell, away to St Mirren. But I think in that little nugget there, that little capsule around the Old Firm game, he hasn't won an Old Firm game. Rangers need to beat Celtic. Well, to do that and to destroy Celtic, we had them at Ibrox on the 2nd of January. We've dropped points in the 2 league games before that and the 2 league games after it. That's like the price we paid. We sucked all the energy, in the games going up to it and the games after it to do that to Celtic, to have that marquee performance, that kind of result that will keep pulling us forward in general terms while we try to sweep up all the underlying problems in between times. And the manager's taken that on board. We went to the League Cup final with Celtic expecting to get thrashed. Expect to get thrashed off. Expected to get thrashed off Nice. We expected to get thrashed off Tottenham. Expected to get thrashed off Celtic in the League Cup final. Expected to get thrashed off Manchester United. None of that happened. We went to Hampden to play Celtic in the League Cup final. John Souttar injured, and then 67 minutes, I think it was, Leon Balogun goes off injured. One of our replacement centre halves goes off injured during this intense match. And it's still got extra time to go. So he misses 50 odd minutes of the game. Leon Balogun, we're having to rearrange things, and we still take it down to penalties and should probably have won the game, as the manager was saying yesterday. If we'd got the decisions, we should have got an extra time. We go to Old Trafford, Souttar's still missing. We're up against Harry, what's his face? You know, like slaphead, shovel face, Harry Maguire that plays for Manchester United, who's, for all the abuse he takes as a defender, is absolutely lethal in the box for Manchester United corners. And we don't have John Souttar. We don't have our biggest physical unit at the back. Again, still. And Diomande, who is a one-man energy machine in these European games, especially away from home, he's suspended. It's like, what the hell are we going to do here? And then we get to half-time. Balogun, again, is out by half-time. He's gone. And Connor Barron, the replacement for Diomande, he's gone as well at half-time. We're bringing on Ross McCausland to put in at full-back, to put our ageing, under-pressure right back of a captain into centre-half. Bring Bailey Rice and Finlay Curtis into this game. Boys, Waynes, against Manchester United at Old Trafford. Czerny, who for me is probably our player of the season so far, he sits down. He just sits down. He's broken. He's just gone too far. He's got a rest for, was it Motherwell at Fir Park, and the whole country has gone completely insane about how unmanly he is. Basically, he was questioning his character. Whereas this manager that we think doesn't know about sports science is turning around and saying to us, you know, he's ruining all these players, or he's doing too much sports science. He turned and said, well, the guy's played like 30 odd games already this season. That's only played the entirety of last season for Wolfsburg. You know, it just makes sense. And then we see him at Old Trafford just basically sitting down. That's why we get so many injuries. Because something has to give in games like this when we're totally overperforming. You know, when the whole is amounting to so much more than the sum of the parts. Something's got to give. Something's got to feed that jump in performance, and it will be injuries to players. As I say, but it's like he's getting maximum. He's getting like 150 miles an hour out of an engine. Just doesn't have the capacity for that. Kind of car engine analogy there. I'm not very mechanical, but I think I have a feeling we're going to be really grateful to this manager. I think we should be grateful to for a lot of the stuff he's done. There was a lot of chat in 2012, playing Queen's Park tomorrow, let's go back to 2012, about how we should just go with kids. That's it, just build it up, this kind of fantasy world of, let's make it completely organic, let's absolve our sins by not buying any more big players. We got into this position because of, EBTs and spending too much money. Let's never spend money again. Let's just make everybody an innocent and a martyr. Let's play 12-year-olds every weekend. We'll watch them growing up and it'll be fantastic and pure. And no, that was never going to happen. Because apart from anything else, we're in the middle of a massive identity crisis in 2012. Everybody was telling us we were a brand new club, and we knew we weren't, and we needed to prove that. And I think Charles Green, total scumbag and what have you, but this is how you stumble your way forward. It's not always pure. It's rarely a smooth upward curve. There's all sorts of this horrible, clatty, kind of clunking stuff that goes on, and Charles Green was amongst the most clatty of them all. But he got bums on seats. He retained the season ticket culture at Ibrox. He made Rangers, even though a diluted, a Z-list version of what Rangers usually are, we're the big spenders in the league. Whatever league we happen to be in domestically, we'll spend a hell of a lot of money, get in recognisable names, big names, Francisco Sandaza. We'll get these guys in, and they'll be so much better than most of the other teams in that league that we are playing in domestically. So he's done that again, and it's been fed by the no surrender attitude from the Rangers support. We don't do walking away, but it gave us something to watch. It looked like old Rangers. It looked like the Rangers that we usually are. So this is fine, and it maintained the season ticket culture. That's a routine. A lot of talk about I'm not going to renew next season. It's very difficult not to. When it's your whole life, it's like every 2 weeks you're meeting the same people, going to the same place. It becomes part of your life. You don't want to miss out on it. So I think that had to be done at that point in time. Now, and it's still, we're still going to have big name players and have to fork out millions. You can't just go with kids, but there's going to be a more organic, I think, more kind of, until we get back to that point in time, where maybe somebody comes in and buys us. We have a bit more money, an owner with a bit more money, with a bit more investment, but I think it's going to be that we wanted back then, that the idealists wanted back in 2012. You're getting a big chunk of that just now as well. We're having to bring through Scottish players, having to bring through players who know the team. I think it's a bit of a misnomer, this whole thing about Scottish players know the teams. I think it's overplayed. I do believe it. I do believe, for example, it was always English players, and for Peter Hoystra, Terry Butcher, Graham Roberts, no, not Graham Roberts, Chris Woods. These were the guys that always get sent off in Old Firm games. You know, Terry Hurlock and all that. Whereas the Scottish boys were just like, well, we grew up with this hatred, we grew up in this atmosphere, so we know how to work it. I think there definitely is a bit of that involved with Rangers, and the manager himself talking about that yesterday. He wants more Scottish players. He wants people who know and understand the cultural aspects of the Scottish scene. That's good, but I think it can be overplayed. But we're just going to have to go with youth for the sake of it just now, because we just don't have the money. We're patently skint. And I think in 2012, a lot of people were saying, well, we're just happy to have a club. As long as we've got a club, that's the main thing. Well, let's remember that at this point in time, because this man is seriously overachieving with the very small resources that he does have. I think Niels Coppin, his job's really important, and we're already getting... He's doing it well, I think. I think things are coming... There's always going to be hiccups, etc. But there's a lot of stuff that's counter, it's kind of contrary, a lot of stuff coming for the Rangers support. Let's look at Celtic. They always have games won nice and early. That'll be Ross County was 3-0 up at half time on them last Sunday, and 3-0 up within half an hour against St Johnstone recently at Ibrox. We do a lot of that as well ourselves. Look at Celtic, they keep going to the end. They know how to get it done, even if they're struggling in the final stages. All right, well, that's a different thing altogether. But we've done that as well. I mean, even against Royal Union St Gilles, we're 2-0 up. You know, but we're kind of hanging on at the end. But we did hang on. That's getting it done at the end as well. You know, we do score late winners when we need to, but not as often as we'd like. Kieran Dowell, I forgot to mention Kieran Dowell, he's just so unworthy of being mentioned. Probably Kieran Dowell is completely negligible contribution to Rangers in his whole time here. Scored a couple of cracking goals, well, one cracking goal against Livingston at home, and scored that goal against Motherwell at Fir Park last festive period, which set us up for the Old Firm game, but done nothing. Kieran Dowell, he's off to Birmingham City on loan, won't be missed. We're hoping he doesn't come back. No harm to them, but just didn't do anything at all. But Niels Coppin, we have this contrary thing where Igaman, all we can talk about with Igaman is how much we're going to sell him for, how much is he going to be worth. Every time whereas I'm like, well, can we just enjoy having him? I hear a lot of this. Ryan Kent, we sold him at completely the wrong time. Alfredo Morelos, we sold him at completely the wrong time. Barisic is always the one we sold it completely the wrong time as well. And maybe we didn't make any money from him. I know we have to make money to keep going forward, etc. You need to look after your finances as best you possibly can. But they won us the league. We needed that league title like nothing else on it. You need to remember the football stuff. They helped get us to a European final as well. They put us back on the Scottish map as being, this is Rangers, we are back again. We're doing stuff that other teams can't do in Scotland. You know, we're winning the league unbeaten. The Celtic had done that recently. They'd done that in 2016. We'll just throw in a wee European final then the following season to remind you, you know, who's the big team in Scotland. It was, and we could have done that without Kent and Morelos and all these guys, and Lundstrom, all these guys we hated eventually, and just didn't make any money from them. That whole thing of only thinking about the money we can get for somebody, it's a very much a too much time to think about football kind of phenomenon. But also, it reminds me of these like English fans, the kind of tourists. It was great to win the Champions League because it means we qualify automatically for next season's Champions League. You know, the main thing is that as long as you get Champions League qualification, these people who watch Sky Sports News too much and forget to actually enjoy the football. Forget the whole point of it isn't perpetual qualification for stuff and making lots of money. The point is seeing your team playing well and winning. That's the point. Excuse me. The only deeper point than that is having a team, is having a club, so you don't want them to go bust. But this, you know, did you enjoy becoming champions of Europe? Yeah, because it meant we automatically qualified for next season's Champions League, and that's where the smart money is. And I don't want us to go like that. There comes a point when we made like 40 million in Calvin Bassey and 200 million on Nathan Patterson. There's enough to keep us going. But we did what we had to do to win 55. There's a bit of short-termism in that. We're paying for the price for that now. But now that we've got ourselves going again on a PR front, if you like, and a minimum level of there's no trophy in Scotland you can say that we haven't won since 2011 or 2010. There is, European terms, we're doing absolutely fantastically, better than anybody else in Scotland by a mile and for ages. So now we can just go about our business of properly rebuilding for the future from within. We can do that kind of guru organic stuff at our leisure. The European squad, of course, that was a big thing as well. Who was going to, the three changes we could make to the European squad? So Kieran Dill, he's off the list, obviously, away to Birmingham. Oscar Cortez was a big one. Kassan Virgil, back at Feyenoord, we had him on loans, a cracking player. Kassan Virgil, the little we saw of him, looked really promising. Typical for Rangers, he gets a big injury and that's him away. We're probably not going to see him again, so no problem getting him off the list. Oscar Cortez, that's the one that's a bit more controversial because we've pre-contract agreed to pay big money. It was at 5 million in the summer for him. He did play well though. This time last year, he got us up to the top of the league. He was phenomenal. When we had him on the left-hand side, it was just, we were tremendous. Another thing we have is this, we're simultaneously talking about how much money are we going to get for Iggaman. That's fine, he's played really well in about a dozen games. How much money are we going to get for Iggaman? 10 million, 20 million, 30. We better not undersell Iggaman when he goes. But also, we're giving the club a hard time because we're not going to be able to keep Czerny. What's the point of Czerny? We can't keep him. Oh, he's a player of the season for a start. And we had Abdallah Sima last season. Who was phenomenal, but got injured quite a lot. We missed him a lot of the time. Czerny is Sima, but constantly available. And look, Abdallah Sima went on and done really well in France, scoring the Champions League this season with a team that we couldn't afford to match their wages. And Czerny has been phenomenal, and for the team as well, he's such a professional. But he's either producing numbers, or he's producing fantastic performances, or he's producing both. He's just always doing something. Václav Czerny, he's a proper player that we might not be able to afford. We probably won't be able to afford them at the end of the season. He'll go back to Wolfsburg, they'll sell him to whoever. But that's the thing, he is being advertised. He's going to make money for Wolfsburg because of playing in the Champions League and scoring, so playing the Europa League with Rangers and scoring these goals and doing so well in Scotland, posting these numbers and getting his fitness up to speed. Being a first team regular, other clubs will want to give us players that they can't. Not other clubs from top 5 leagues who just don't quite have a place for that guy in our team right now. He's on the cusp of being a regular. Send him to Rangers because look at what they did with Sima. Look at what they did with Czerny. We've upgraded these players. We've upcycled these players. So we get another one in next season. That's part of the model. You're quite happy to have Iggaman out the door before he's arrived. So if there can be a complaint where it's an actual loan player that we screw the arse out of him for numbers all season, and then we sell him up. We give him back to his parent club, and it will encourage clubs around Europe to give us their players as well. I'm not happy with the way things are just now. Obviously, we're so far off the top in Scotland, but in every other aspect, I think we're playing so far above ourselves. So the European squad, these 3 players out, and we brought in Clinton Ciala has come in instead of Fernandes. That was a big shout. Clinton Ciala says he's still to find out if he can survive proper tests or a whole season. He's just a kind of flash in the pan at the moment, but he's very encouraging, and we need more centre halves. Yanis Hadji conducted himself brilliantly. I was all for just dumping him. He doesn't want to be at the club. His agent's talking trash about us. Get rid of him. No. As soon as Yanis Hadji come back in, he played brilliantly, and he wasn't brilliant. He played effectively. He's really played effectively. Yanis Hadji knows what he can't do, and he does what he can really, really well. He applies himself. And that whole problem we've had with Rangers for so many years now. We start so slowly. We look like we don't have the pace of the game. Yanis Hadji didn't play well against Dundee at Dens. Nobody did that night where we dropped points at Dens. But what chance you got against a Lyle Cameron team? That boy's fantastic. But that's one of the rare times he hasn't started. He was fantastic at Tannadice. And it's a kind of dogged thing. It's not always pretty, but it can be pretty at the same time. He's using his physicality now. He understands his lack of pace, but he knows what to do with it. And he knows how to make his game work. Like the balls he's playing into the box in games, first time balls that he's putting into the box from wide, and that's sensational, getting his goals straight away. But more to the point, in his interviews, pre and post match, he's so respectful. He might be working his ticket, you would say cynically, but I don't think he can really fake that level of sincerity. He comes across as a very proud young man, a very down-to-earth young man considering his heritage, and he's conducted himself brilliantly. And I think it's just the continental way of things. You get your agent to do the dirty work, and you can be the nicest guy in the world. And I think that's probably what he's doing. But he's been a credit to himself, and I'm really happy to have him back in the European squad. He announced himself in Europe. He had that goal against Hibs, but he announced himself with the 2 goals against Braga, didn't he? That great night against Braga at Ibrox in the Europa League, in this competition that we're playing. And I'm going to do it again. We need a wee break. It's going far too long. We're going to be a wee breakwater between the squad stuff from this week and go into the Queen's Park preview. And I'm going to do it with the Europa League, because the Europa League is everything. But Danilo, not fit at the moment, should be here soon, says the man. Should be back to fitness soon. Always should be back to fitness soon, Danilo. But when he does come in, it makes a difference. It makes a massive difference. To have Igaman and Danilo and Dessers available to us, I am not going into another European final short of a striker. We should get Danilo into that squad. I'm quite happy with the changes to the European squad. I don't really remember us ever being that upset or that worked up about a European squad. We don't have that many times that we can actually talk about it. We're in the second stage, we're in the knockout stages, whatever. I don't ever remember it being such a big thing. One player we didn't get in this transfer window was Lawrence Shankland. Us keeping Dessers is a big thing for me. Us keeping who was the other big chat? We thought we'd lose Ridvan Yilmaz as well. There was somebody else we thought might go out the door. Who was? I can't remember. But we've keeping Dessers is a big thing for me. And Lawrence Shankland not coming in, I'm not saying I'm disappointed in it just now. That's down to Dessers and Igaman, and Danilo scored twice against Celtic at Hampden and Ibrox in the space of a few weeks, so he knows what he's doing, Danilo, when he is available. But I think the Shankland thing, it took the worry off that. It was an obvious move for us at the beginning of the season, but I just don't think we can, even though he's a free agent in the summer, I don't think we can justify it financially to go from, even at this point in time. He's not been scoring the goals this season, Lawrence Shankland, for Hearts, but my God, he's been leading the line for them. Been watching wee bits of their games, and he's a legend in the making. I think he's now going to have a kind of Jermaine Defoe type of time. Rangers, he'll come in as a bit of an icon of somebody else who comes in and does a really great job for us, but he'll always be a Jambo thing. He's never going to be a proper Ranger through and through. He'll obviously, he did support the club and what have you, but I think he'd come in for his next season. I would still want him, particularly as we're selling. I think he was only going to have a chance of coming to us in this transfer window if we'd sold Dessers, and that wasn't going to happen. Hadji was the other guy. Hadji was the other fella, I think, next in line for being sold because of the negotiations that saw him left out of the European squad for the first half of the season, the kind of dispute with the club. That's all been sorted, and he's conducted himself fantastically. So let's have a wee commercial break, and in my commercial break I always like to talk about Europa League. I'm not going to let it go. I can't let Europa League go. I know the last 2 pods I did, you'd be switching off even earlier than you usually do, because I'm fronting it with a list of winners, just recanting finalists in the Fairs Cup and the preview pod last Saturday night for the Ross County game, and then doing every UEFA Cup final in my post-match reaction pod for the Ross County 4-0 victory last Sunday. And the numbers are down. YouTube keep telling me to make money out you, but I don't know how, because I have to do what I have to do. And I think it's just Yanis Hadji this week wishing his dad's birthday this week. His dad most famous for a few things, but winning the UEFA Cup with Galatasaray in the year 2000, beating Arsenal in penalties in Copenhagen, and his dad, there was a wee videos getting posted this week of his dad's flicks and tricks during that game. It's an absolute class act. Yanis Hadji becomes famous to us through the game against Braga in that same competition. Yanis Hadji, who is born the day we beat Bayer Leverkusen in Leverkusen, the Barry Ferguson pivot, a fantastic result in the UEFA Cup, which is the competition his dad won. It's still the same competition, it's the same trophy, it's still in the Europa League, we still play for the UEFA Cup trophy. And the picture obviously get put up then of 2 years later, it's Yanis Hadji in his dad's arms in the full Galatasaray kit next to the Europa League. It's like you're putting the two things together. You could fit him inside at 2-year-old, he could fit inside that trophy. He's scored amazing goals in that trophy. Scoring against Brøndby in just outside Copenhagen in Denmark in the season we got to the final. it's just outside Copenhagen where his dad played in the final and they won the Europa League. And then we put out Dessers yesterday for the presser. Dessers is not born in Nigeria, but he's a Nigerian international, and he played in a European final in 2022. The same, was it the week before, we had Joe Aribo, not born in Nigeria, but a Nigerian international, scoring our only goal in a European final the same season, and it's an absolute legend of the feedback to the pods here on the YouTube feedback page underneath this video. You can post your comments, and an absolutely brilliant guy. He gets in touch regular, and he was reminding us that this is how we do. This is what Rangers do. We lose 2 finals of a competition, then the third final we win it. We lost the Cup Runners' Cup final in '61, we lost the Cup Runners' Cup final in 1967, and then we won it in 1972. We have lost the UEFA Cup final 2008. It's the same trophy, it's the same competition. 2022, we lose the final. We're due to win it next time, whenever that next time might be. I'm hoping it's this season. I think Athletic Bilbao have got the sign. They've got the final, they're hosting it. But I think there's a sign about it. I think it's destiny for anybody. It's going to be destiny for them. But I feel as if we're next in line. But no, but I think we'll be struggling to get to the quarter final. Never mind get any further than that. It's ridiculous. But it would be a laugh. I'd be quite happy to finish like 5th in the SPFL Premiership, because if we win the Europa League, you straight into the Champions League anyway. It'd be quite next season straight into the group stage. It'd be quite hilarious. But excuse me, I think it's symbolism beyond all belief. We went into the second Cup Winners' Cup final that we played in '67. We dropped McLean and Forest. We binned them because of Berwick, because of one bad day. A lesson to not overreact. And we go into a European final against Bayern Munich in Bayern, in Bavaria, in Nuremberg, without a striker. And it takes us to extra time. It's extra time. They beat us by a single goal. I mean, what a difference any kind of striker would have made. And then it's our second final in the UEFA Cup / Europa League / Fairs Cup. We're playing Germans again, a Bundesliga team again. And we're not in Germany this time, but it's penalties. It's penalties, extra time and penalties before they can beat us. And again, we're playing without a recognised striker in that final. We can't have that happening. Again. And I know that when I start listing finals, and that really pees people off, but it's like you've got to pay your debts. I was explaining to you last Saturday, the preview pod last Saturday, how I went to all 3 European finals. I went to the Cup Winners' Cup final in '99, I went to the Champions League final in 2002, and then I went to the UEFA Cup final in 2007, Espanyol against Sevilla, because it was at Hampden, and that was me completing the set of all 3 European finals. Following season, Rangers are in their first European final for 36 years. It was like I had paid my debts. I'd done the pilgrimage, the big man upstairs who governs your club getting into a European final. It happens if you do the right thing. So I did the list of Fairs Cup winners last Saturday. I did the UEFA Cup, and it's beyond a coincidence. I just realised the other day, the Fairs Cup, which is the forerunner. Newcastle United played that League Cup semi-final the other night, and people talking about how they're back at Wembley, they're 1 game away. It might as well be 10 games away the way Liverpool are playing just now, but they're 1 game away from winning a major trophy again. What is that major trophy they're talking about? The first major trophy since 1969, the year I was born. What major they beat Rangers in the semi-final to get to that major? It's the bloody Fairs Cup. The Fairs Cup, so it is the Fairs. UEFA don't recognise it, but the Fairs Cup is the starter of the UEFA Cup, is the forerunner of the Europa League. It's all the one competition. Fairs Cup was 16 years. I thought it was only 13 Fairs Cup finals ever played. 13, they finished in 1971, and 71-72 was the first season of the UEFA Cup. And the UEFA Cup, it was a format change, a new name, a new trophy. Rangers do well. We do well in seasons where there's a major format change. We won the Cup Winners' Cup 71-72. And the Fairs Cup, it took a while to get it off the ground, to get it up and running. It was very complicated because you had to wait for trades fairs at various cities before you could play the game. So the first edition of the Fairs Cup took 3 seasons to complete. It's the 55-58 Fairs Cup won by Barcelona. Then the second one took 2 seasons to complete, 58-68 Fairs Cup. And then after that it was just over a year, then it just went quite normal. But it only lasted 16 years, the Fairs Cup. It only had 13 finals, but it lasted 16 years, and that's coincidentally, since we've changed from UEFA Cup to Europa League. The Europa League started 2009-2010 season. But now 2024, 2025, 16 seasons. It's the same. So this no take long. It's got to be done. It's got to be. It's the whole, you know, the, is it Miles Davis does the whole thing where he's like, sir, every time you check your watch, I just start again. It's going to be a bit atonal. It's going to be a bit off the beaten track, but it's just got to be done. We've got to pay our dues. We've got to put everything into Rangers getting as far as they possibly can in Europe this season. But imagine become the first Scottish club to win 2 European competitions simultaneously, 2 different European competitions. I mean, phenomenal. You know, still not as good as Celtic won the European Cup, but different. A different way of coming at it. First Scottish club to get to a European final, first Scottish club to play, first British club to play in the Champions League group stages. We've done so many firsts in Europe. This would be right up there. It would be the greatest thing to happen to you in your entire life. Never ever slag our achievements in Europe. I think 2009, 2010, it was Fulham lost in the Volkspark Stadium in Hamburg after extra time to Atletico Madrid. 2011 Europa League, that was the first season of the Europa League. In 2011, all Portuguese final. Porto beat Braga 1-0 in the Aviva Stadium. Dublin, Radamel Falcao, what a sexy guy, what a sexy player when he was at his height. Remember he came to Ibrox with Galatasaray during the COVID season, but he still lost. A really good looking guy and all that. But I thought, who's the woman in Modern Family, the big kind of sexy, ridiculously sexy Jay's wife in Modern Family? She's Colombian as well. I always thought they'd be a great couple. You know what I mean? He was like kind of male version of her. And then he scores again the following season. And the following season's Europa League final, 2012. But that was for Atletico Madrid. When they beat Athletic Bilbao in the National Stadium in Romania, in Bucharest. And that was Athletic Bilbao actually formed. It was students who'd moved from Bilbao to Madrid and were missing their hometown team, that they formed Atletico de Madrid. That's why they get the red and white stripes. And the kit's quite an amazing coming together of two historic link to. But that was the 2013 was Chelsea beating Benfica 2-1 in the Johan Cruyff Arena. 2014 was Sevilla losing, beating Benfica again. At Benfica, the curse of Bela Gutmann. They haven't won a European final since Gutmann resigned because he wouldn't get a pay rise back in the 60s, even though Gutmann come back to the Benfica, but they haven't won so many European finals. They've just lost because he said you'll never win. It'll be 100 years before Benfica win another European trophy. So if you're around in 2062, let us know how that goes. But they lost on penalties in the Juventus Arena to Sevilla. Then Sevilla retained it by beating Dnipropetrovsk in the National Stadium in Warsaw. The following season, 2016, Sevilla made it 3 in a row, beating Liverpool and Basel. Beating Jurgen Klopp's Liverpool and Basel. And I saw Liverpool playing Bordeaux at Anfield to get Bordeaux off the list of European finalists that I hadn't seen in the flesh. I nipped down there for that one in that tournament. So that was quite a thing. But that was Sevilla. You get Ajax, Real Madrid and Bayern Munich all in the European Cup / Champions League, or both in the case of Real Madrid. The only other clubs to have won a European trophy 3 years in the trot. Sevilla, the only ones to do it outside the Champions League. They do it with the Europa League. That was 2017. Manchester United beat Ajax in the Friends Arena, as it was then, the National Arena in Stockholm. Paul Pogba, Mkhitaryan and Jose Mourinho had to sell it to the Manchester United supporters. This is actually quite an achievement. You've won all 3 European trophies. Imagine having to sell. 2018 was Atletico and Madrid, monsters in this competition, beating thrashing Marseille and Lyon. 2019 was Chelsea thrashing Arsenal in Baku. I mean, we're on our way to the Baku. We're on our way. We didn't get there, but Chelsea did, and they thrashed Arsenal 4-1, a London derby in Azerbaijan. Alex Iwobi getting Arsenal's goal. I always remember that every time I see him. And Pedro scoring for Chelsea, Pedro also scored in the Europa League the Champions League final for Barcelona, and he scored in the Europa League this season. You know, he's 37-year-old, still going. Scored in 6 different competitions. Only player ever to do that, they think, in 2009, 2010 for Barcelona. But it means having to count Spanish Super Cup and the UEFA Super Cup as competitions when they're really just ceremonial games. But give the guy the record. It's got Club World Championship, Champions League, La Liga, Copa del Rey. Some man, Pedro. 2020 was behind closed doors, round Energy Stadium, Cologne, and it was Sevilla beating Sevilla. Just don't lose a European final when they get there, especially this one. They beat Inter 3-2. Romelu Lukaku scoring at both ends. Sums up his career of so near but so far from ultimate glory. And Godin scoring for Inter That meant he scored, and he'd also scored in the Champions League final for Atletico in 2014. Both of them lost to Spanish teams wearing white shirts. So Diego Godin, what a player. 2021 was Manchester United losing an epic penalty shootout 11-10 to Villarreal in Gdansk after the one each draw. David De Gea being the only guy to miss his penalty. 2022, I can't remember what happened. I think it went to penalties as well. Some amazing team with a fantastic support and a pissy shithole of a stadium, losing to Eintracht Frankfurt on penalties. 2023 was Roma, who'd won the Conference League the previous season, trying to work that promotion system. Came to within penalties. They lost. Jose Mourinho's Roma this time. They're trying to sell this one. Losing to Sevilla, of course. Montiel was on penalties. He scores a winning penalty in this one, as he had in the World Cup final just a few months before, December 2022 for Argentina, and he was scored. It was a retake. The penalty was retaken, and he retakes and he scores it a second time. One of the things that caused Jose Mourinho to persecute and almost get murdered the English referee in that game. Nice guy, Jose. 2024 was Ademola Lookman's hat trick for Atalanta of Bergamo, my old favourites. In Dublin, back in the Viva Stadium, Dublin, against Bayer Leverkusen. Bayern Neverkusen, but they'd finally won the Bundesliga title. This was the first game they'd lost. They won the double in Germany. They won the Deutscher Pokal, whatever you call it, as well. And this was the only game they lost all season. The only competitive match they lost all season was the final of the Europa League. And Ademola Lookman, again, Nigerian, but not born in Nigeria. It's a wee... you keep Nigerian players that are going to do well for you, and that was the first hat-trick scored in a European final since almost 50 years before Jupp Heynckes, who famously won the Champions League as a manager with Real Madrid and Bayern Munich, knowing that he was leaving after before both finals, knowing that was going to be his last game as manager in both cases. But as a player, what a player. He scored the hat-trick. He was the last guy to score a hat-trick. And he scored it in the UEFA Cup final back in 1975, and still on the home and away days at home at the Bokelberg. Borussia Mönchengladbach in the first leg had drawn 0-0, and then they went away and they won 5-0, 5-1. And he scored a hat-trick then against 20 Onskade, who has a chance. Rangers could be. That's how we do these things. Oh my God, it's because of the cold, folks. It's making it even worse. Maybe I should just stop this, post it, and come back to you with my actual Queen's Park preview. I don't know how I've talked this long without really talking about Queen's Park. Let's go for it. The Spiders, yeah, what a club. Won 6 out of the first 9. Won the first 3 Scottish Cups, then Vale of Leven won it 3 in a row. Vale of Leven taking us on in their first final, just beating us after a couple of replays. And then our first Scottish Cup final as well. Then Queen's Park won it 3 times in a row. Again, as I say, the team that have won it most outside the Old Firm, a fantastic achievement. I think Hearts and Aberdeen have both played in more finals than Queen's Park, but they can't. I think Aberdeen... It's Hearts. Hearts have won it 8 times, Aberdeen have won it 7 times. Queen's Park have won it 10 times anyway. Only other team in double figures for Scottish Cups. They only lost 2 finals, Queen's Park. I think they lost them both to Celtic, and they won the Scottish Cup at Ibrox, the first Ibrox. They won the Scottish Cup at the current Ibrox, and they won the Scottish Cup at Kinning Park, won the Scottish Cup final at Kinning Park as well, our ground before the first Ibrox. So big link there, but we never played them. We've never played them in the Scottish Cup final. They lost the last Scottish Cup final in 1900 and never been back to a major final since then, but they've staged so many, they've hosted so many. 1903 Hampden, the properly Hampden that we have just now, this site, a proper mega stadium by that point in time, because there was a competition going on in the Victorian period or into the early Edwardian period, but this Ibrox, Parkhead, Hampden, which one was going to host the most internationals and host the most Scottish Cup finals. 40 people dying at Ibrox in an international match in 1902 didn't help our case. We had to start rebuilding it after that, but Hampden eventually took over. But yeah, it's Queen's Park. I just find that fascinating. The strip just now just sums up. They went professional November 2019. They get sick of losing players for no money, getting no money back. And I equate Queen's Park with that line in Heat about, do you see me doing thrill seeker liquor store hold-ups with a Born to Lose tattoo on my chest? No, I do not. No, I do. I am never going back. They were used to propping up league football in Scotland when there was no pyramid system. They were at the bottom all the time. And East Stirlingshire as well. And I see East Stirlingshire's kit at times virtually indistinguishable from Queen's Park's. And as a kid growing up, I remember going to see the Shire in my 20s with my mate, going to see them at First Park. A phenomenal experience. A mystical ground, First Park, like up the tenements, the entrance across up to, it's just like Winton Park in Ardrossan, one of the street I was born in. Maybe that's why I found it a bit more of a turn on than most other folk. Plus the black and white hoops, they Winton occasionally playing black and white hoops, but they've got the black and white hoops as well, really close together, really long shirts, Victorian style. It was like the Victorian style East Stirlingshire. But they're professional. The Shire are semi-professional at times. Queen's Park were doggedly amateur for most of their existence, and it was quite a thing the other day to see Queen's Park, see pictures of them this season, and their kit. It's what I would imagine. It kind of fascinated me. It's Queen's Park in the professional era. They've got like red Adidas stripes on it, and the hoops, the black hoops, are still quite close together, but I think they're kind of staggered at points. The sleeves are a bit different. It's Queen's Park still retaining their character, but it's a professional Queen's Park. It's what you would have imagined it without you knowing you had imagined it, what their kit would look like. I find them quite exciting, Queen's Park. I think they deserve to do best. I'm supposed to introduce this section with a really sombre story. Queen's Park, in May, the 6th of May, this is quite incredible. I think 6th of May 2000, my friend and I went to see Queen's Park winning the 3rd Division title at Cowdenbeath, at Central Park, Cowdenbeath. We're just doing that thing of trying to see as many grounds as possible. I'd been to Central Park with Rangers, but my mate, he'd never been. Rangers would be playing on the Sundays. So, all right, let's go to Cowdenbeath. And we went to Cowdenbeath. Like, we're getting to Boozers where there was nothing on the pumps. They were just giving you cans. Guys sitting in the corner laughing at you when you ask for a pint or something. We ended up in some rough parts of Cowdenbeath. Don't say there's nothing there. Nice parts as well. But we had a lovely day. Everybody's really friendly, great laugh and all that. And we stand with the Queen's Park supporters, and it's like, it's really historic. I'd also been down to Shieldfield to see Berwick Rangers, just to go to Shieldfield. I hadn't, because I would never get to these grounds with Rangers. We're talking like late 90s, early 2000s here. Obviously, Rangers would maybe never play there again. I'd missed them in the Scottish Cup there a couple of times, Rangers, but we went down to Shieldfield, and it so happened it was Queen's Park they were playing. But I remember the ball coming in. I was standing my mate and I standing just to the left of the kind of Ducat cowshed thing they've got there on the terrace and opposite the main stand, and the ball came up to me, and instead of throwing it back, the Queen's Park player's right in front of me. He's standing, he's like waiting to take the shy, but instead of just throwing it back to him, I decided to drop kick it back to him, because in those days I could get my leg up that high, apart from anything else, but also just like I wanted to kick a ball into the hand of the oldest club in Scotland, the club. Here they were playing in England against English opposition. It's like, this is the team that provided all the players for the first international football match ever played. It's Scotland's first game ever played, and I'm kicking the ball. But I felt as if I'd played for Queen's Park really by doing that. It was a lovely moment. And here we went to see them at Hampden as well, playing. I think it was at Berwick Rangers again in the league. It's an eerie experience watching Queen's Park at proper Hampden. But in the 6th of May 2000, we saw them winning the title. Here I'm watching Queen's Park winning a trophy. It's not a major trophy, obviously, but I'm seeing Queen's Park lifting a trophy. It's something that hasn't happened that often since the Victorian days, the days of Queen Victoria on the throne. This was quite a thing, a wee buzz for us. And that night, so we have a few drinks in Cowdenbeath, a few more drinks in Edinburgh, a few more drinks in Glasgow, and I'm heading up the road about 11 o'clock or something. And I lived up, I told this before, it was really cheap digs because the landlord controlled the heat. It's like a student digs basically, but my wife and I had just kind of moved in. We get married out of that house, a great flat up there, but it meant I was walking up, ironically, Observatory Road. Keep your eyes open, Alec. Somebody for a dross and all that. See my fair share of trouble. I was, I just don't know why. I don't know to this day why I had my head down. I'd really enjoyed my day, a nice day. I had a few drinks. I'd obviously been drinking, but I wasn't completely pissed. And I'm walking up Observatory Road, and I just remember the guy going, "What time is it, mate? You get time on you?" And the classic, I really, so corny. And I actually went to look at my watch. Mate, it's the next thing. Boof, I'll get smacked right in the coop. And I think because I was leaning forward, because Observatory Road up the top bit where this guy hit me, it's really steep. So I'm kind of naturally leaning forward so I'll no roll back down the hill, just while walking, So I'm on it because he's punching me back. It's just kind of setting me straight, and I'm falling forward. And I looked up, and I immediately lunged forward and just started swinging. Never connected with anybody, but you go into you're automatic. The instincts kick in, and there was what it was four fellas, four Glaswegians, obviously of Asian heritage, of Pakistani heritage, I would say. Young dudes, from about 20 to about 30, and there was years old, but there was four of them. There was three standing on the pavement right in front of me, and there was another one on the road who just come out the car that they were driving. The police told me later they were driving about the West End Pit and Fulton Hospital all night. So they're looking for soft touches, but there's literally, it was like somebody, I swear in Davy Cooper's left boot, there was literally a guy with a bike chain in his hand. It was like the Warriors. It was like a 1970s movie or something like that. One of them had a cricket bat, and the other one had a bike chain, an actual bike chain. Except the big fella who'd hit me, he didn't need anything. And they're like, was just going to give me a doing. So I'd tried swinging back at them in the back. They didn't realise though that I come for a drossing. So I'm used to getting punched. I know how to take a punch. I'm used to getting a doing. It wasn't a big deal to me. So I just, my balls wobble, but they don't fall down. I was every bit as fat then as I am now. And I just got, I wobbled back forward. I was swinging about, and there was a bit of dancing in the pavement. And eventually, they knocked my glasses clean off. I never found them. I never found these specs. Again, I know it's a really tempting look. I'd love to punch your specs and all. I know, but I wasn't as blind as I was then. I just couldn't find them. No, that I was looking at that point in time, and I'm like, right, who did I go for first? Just, and as one came in towards me, I would go to hit him. He'd back off, another one would come in towards, and I'd go to hit. I wasn't hitting Andy, and they weren't hitting me either. There was just a lot of swinging and kind of like, let's line this up. I don't know if it's because it was maybe a busy road, there was traffic coming or something, but I just went. I was like, boys, I'm actually knackered here. And I went to sit down the wee wall outside somebody's house. I just almost kind of went to sit down. It's like, if you're going to just come on, because I'm actually getting knackered with the jumping about the pavement. Let's just get to doing, going here. And they get back in the motor and fucked off. And I just remember thinking to myself, this is the problem. That whole area, a massive Asian community, as we know, if we're playing at Hampden this season, they should all go and support Queen's Park. Because they're obviously, the devil will make work for idle hands to do. It was a few years before the Chris Donald thing. I thought it was going to go. So this kind of thing happened to me all the time when I was a kid. And there was times it was like actual gang fights and stuff, with silly wee gangs and that, and or dross and that when I was in Sockets when I was a kid. So your first instinct was just, this is the shit that happens. But I got up the road and I thought there was a thing, there was a vibe that these guys were going to boot. They were going to date to somebody else. My missus saying you should report to the police in case they go and date somebody else. I never even looked at the license plate of the car, and I just started looking for my specs. I could never find them. So I reported to the police, and they came out and that. And a few days later, CID came out and showed me all these mugshots of Asian bad guys, and I'm like, I couldn't see them at all, and I couldn't see them. But I remember a few years later, it was like 3-4 years later, the Chris Donald thing happened, and you think, fucking hell, man, that could have went another way, or maybe it was the same. You worry about these things, but it didn't make me racist. I've been involved in that kind of thing where it's guys, it's Celtic guys that hate you because you're a Rangers supporter, or it's guys for Salkits that hate you because you're for Ardrossan, or for Stevenson that hate you because you're for Salkits and Ardrossan. Various things like that, just any excuse. It just wasn't any different to anybody else doing it. So, but I remember thinking, yeah, that's the thing with Queen's Park. We've got Rangers are the Protestants, Celtic are the Catholics. Third Lanark used to have Jewish support, a lot of Jewish supporters, because they could walk on the Sabbath. They didn't have to take public transport or take a car. They could walk to the game at Cathkin Park. And we'll get obviously Partick Thistle. They are the atheists. They're not involved in any. They're religiously non-religious. So I think all we're missing is we need to get the Asian community involved. I did an article for 442 years and years ago, 20 years ago, about Asian Rangers and Celtic fans, Asian Old Firm fans, people of Scottish folk but Asian descent, and it broke down as basically Indian. If you're kind of Indian descent, you would support Rangers. If you're Pakistani, most Pakistani Asians would support Celtic. And I'm thinking Queen's Park are right there. and amongst the kind of biggest Asian community in Glasgow, they should just go out and get these folk in through the door. Imagine that. It would take all the pressure off us. Rangers and Celtic would suddenly just be Christians. We'd suddenly just be Christian teams. We could unite together in trying to fight. It would get really nice, wouldn't it? It would get really, really lovely. The politics would get smashing. We would be properly tidied up if we could get the poor Scottish Asian community involved in football. But Queen's Park, now they're professional, they should be making it's a major thing on their doorstep. I've always wondered why it didn't happen, because obviously the Asian community in Scotland is football nuts as much as anybody else. So they should do that and get themselves the support they deserve, Queen's Park, because they pretty much got Scottish football going. Queen's Park actually played in 2 FA Cup finals as well. I know it's Spurs getting thrashed by Liverpool the other night, and Spurs are joint third most FA Cup wins. They're in the Challenge Cup final, Queen's Park, in the Challenge Cup final. They thrashed East Kilbride, but after extra time. 6-2, it was 2 each, Fulton, they beat them 6-2. And they're in the final. I think it's Dunfermline or Livingston they're playing in the final. That's other semis not been decided yet. They were unlucky to get put out the League Cup 1-0 at Pittodrie, Aberdeen, this season. And I'm watching talking of Challenge Cup. It used to be the FA Cup was a Challenge Cup. Spurs won that the third most. It's like Queen's Park in Scotland with the Scottish Cup. And Spurs, it was like a year ending in 1 and stuff like that. They would always get the FA Cup final or win the FA Cup. Queen's Park were in 2 FA Cup finals before Spurs get anywhere near the FA Cup. 1884, 1885. We were 1884, 85. Lost both of them to Blackburn Rovers, who won it 3 in a row, the FA Cup. But I think it was 1886, 87 that we got to the semis. That's our season. We played that season in the FA Cup. Beat Everton, beat Lincoln City in that, but we get beat by Aston Villa in the semi-final. Aston Villa, who won the thing. We get beat by them in the semi-final in Crewe. And I spent most of my childhood obsessed with the Holt End. I eventually got to the Holt End because it was FA Cup semi-finals that pushed me over the edge, watching it on the television. The Holt End divided between 2 supports. A massive, iconic, it's all seated now, obviously a 2-tier stand, but it used to be this gargantuan, mystical terrace. And I got to stand on it in the early 90s. An ambition realised for a Villa home game. But it was always the FA Cup semi-finals that they used to have at Villa Park that made me love that, fascinated with that terrace, and yet we played Aston Villa in an FA Cup semi-final in Crewe, and they beat us 3-1. But Queen's Park done the business of Scottish Cup long before Rangers, done the business in the FA Cup before even Spurs. Or getting to the final anyway. So an incredible club. Hosted 3 European Cups or Champions League finals, 2 Cup Runners' Cup finals, and a UEFA Cup final. We've only hosted 1 leg of a Cup Runners' Cup final, so they're beating us on the stadium front. Although really they sold Hampden in 2020. Lord Haughey, Willie Haughey, come on, so loaded man, like some leper messiah. He's a big Celtic man, obviously. Wally Hoy hurls of money into Celtic, but a big influencer. He's from the Gorbals. Is it Lord Haughey of the Gorbals? And if you're into Gorbals, Queen's Park, just along the road, massive influence. And I think as a Rangers supporter or a Celtic supporter, Hampden, it's in your heart. You're deeply linked with Hampden. So many of our great triumphs have taken place. The old firm. So he went in there and he sorted out the deal that let. He put in money to make sure that Queen's Park were getting enough from the SFA for Hampden. Was it 2020? The year 2020, it was I think 5 million they got for it. That they were then going to use to develop Lesser Hampden, now the City Stadium. But that's not quite happened yet. Queen's Park getting crowds like 728 and stuff. So it's like sometimes it's too. Lesser Hampden's too wee, but obviously Hampden, the National Stadium, is too big for them. Excuse me. Amazingly, Hampden hosted the European Cup. It's got all the crowd records for European football. In 1960, 127,621 people at the famous 7-3 Real Madrid beating Eintracht Frankfurt in the European Cup final. It's funny that the following season, everybody forgets, 2 seasons later, Atletico Madrid beat Fiorentina, or drew with Fiorentina at Hampden in the Cup Winners' Cup final. It's Atletico Madrid, another team from Madrid, against Fiorentina, a team from Italy, much more heralded than Eintracht Frankfurt. And it was basically 100,000 less in that game. There was 21,000 in that game. It was a draw. We went to a replay in Stuttgart, but quite a coincidental thing. Queen's Park have actually lost. They haven't played as many major finals at Hampden as Real Madrid have, because it's 1900 that it stopped for them. But they're building back up towards it now. They finished fifth in the. Sorry, they're currently fifth in the championship. I think they're like. There's 1 point. They're about 8 points, 7 points behind Partick Thistle in fourth. That's the last of the playoff places in the championship. But I think they're only 8 points ahead of the last relegation spot. The first relegation spot, the ninth, the relegation playoff spot in the championship. So they're the best of the rest in the bottom half of the championship table. I don't think they're a team to be underestimated. Queen's Park, if they're not on it, they could do, but obviously they're not amongst the teams in the top challengers in the top flight. They turned professional in 2019. They got Leanne Dempster from Hibs in Motherwell. They got her in through the door. She was there for a few years getting them going. She was always good at her job. And there are a few other CEOs in there, a few managers. Now get Callum Davison in charge, who knows about putting Rangers out the Scottish Cup at Ibrox, having done it during our 55 season 2020-2021. It was at the quarter-final. St Johnstone came to Ibrox and Tav scored in the last minute extra time. Then they went up the park and equalised via their goalkeeper almost in the injury time and extra time, and beat us on penalties. So he won both trophies. He won both trophies that season, both cups that season. We won the league, but somehow it counted for more because he'd won both the cups. Callum Davison, St Johnstone eventually sacking him as they continued to struggle against relegation. But he's been at Queen's Park for a year now. They were unlucky, Queen's Park. They went up through the leagues when they first turned professional, and they had that game against Dundee at Oakoview in the last day of the regular season in 2022-2023, where if they'd won that game, they would have been straight up into the top flight, a meteoric rise. And I think it'd be good to have the original Glasgow derby back as a league derby as well. But they fell away a bit last season, but they revived again this season, stabilising in mid-table under Callum Davison. And yeah, Oakoview, where is your home ground? Queen's Park. They played at the City Stadium. And it's when they sold Hampden, they were playing at Falkirk Stadium, they played at Shirebury Excelsior, they played at Firhill, and then they were playing at Oakoview that season that they nearly went up. But they've got themselves back at Hampden. They beat Montrose in the previous round 3-2 after extra time. Montrose of League One. It's when I see teams like Brecon City in the Highland League, East Stirlingshire in the Lowland League, who else in the Lowland League, and Berwick Rangers dropping into the Lowland League. You're like, yeah, this is Queen's Park refused to do it. They are never going back. I'm not doing those thrill seeker liquor store hold-ups with a born to lose tattoo in my chest anymore. When the trap door was opened at the bottom of league football, Queen's Park got busy, and they got themselves professionalised, and they're ambitious. They're properly ambitious now, and I got a lot of admiration for their history and a lot of admiration for what they are doing just now. I just don't want them to carry on the Scottish Cup. I think we've got to show them proper respect tomorrow. I hope we field a really strong team. There's a lot of talk we should get the kids out and all this. No. This isn't Fraserburgh we're playing. Fraserburgh, who are B team, cuffed 5-0 in the Challenge Cup this season, and in our first team with a few B team inclusions, cuffed 5-0 the last round of the competition at Ibrox. It is our B team get beat 3-1 by Queen's Park, and Queen's Park put our B team, their Colts, out the Challenge Cup this season. There was a pivotal sending off in the game, I'm told, but we don't want to take this chance. This is not Fraserburgh we're playing tomorrow. We need to put a full team out there. I think it's respect to Queen's Park and respect to ourselves as well. We need to keep this team turning over. We don't do well after a break. Rangers, any kind of break, get a proper team out there. I would have just Jack Butland in goals, Tav at right back, Hefty at left back, Suter and Proper, or Balogun's not due to be back yet. Suter and Proper as a centre halves. Maybe Clinton Enciala's going to get a game. Diamondi and Raskin as we're sitting to. The only question is whether you're going to play Igaman and Dessers. I would have Haji wide on the left, Bajrami maybe playing at 10, and you can have Cherny outside right. Maybe Cherny's due a rest. Maybe Cherny is due a rest. But I would definitely go Igaman or Dessers up front, and potentially you could have both of them playing. But I want a properly strong squad out there tomorrow, and hopefully if you get an early lead, if you can get the game put to bed early, well, I think that again to hope for that is a bit disrespectful as well. You can then get subs on, you can then get players bloodied, but we've got a free week next week as well. Let's make the best of it. Let's go out there and let's absolutely thrash Queen's Park in the Scottish Cup and get ourselves a chance of winning a second trophy, winning a trophy for a second time since 2012, and then that can take us onto the stage of retaining. That'll be the next thing to do, the next little tick in getting that forward momentum going to Rangers being back exactly where we need them. This podcast, as poor as it has been, as overblown and verbose as it has been, in other words, a typical Fat Egg podcast, I wish I could offer more, but it is dedicated to the memory of Robert Ryan. Robert, wee Bob, is it Bob 10S? His Twitter handle. If you're involved in any way with Rangers on social media, if you're part of Rangers Twitter, which I was until recently, you'll know Robert. He passed away just a couple of weeks ago there, at the age of 37. The underlying health issues, Robert, as anybody who knows him in any way will know, but the underlying health issues did not stop him in any way being on to you sharp as anything if he had something to say to you via Rangers Twitter. I remember getting the tweet sent to me one night, late on a Friday night. I'd been on Jersnet, and the tweet sent for Bob with a picture of my fat coupon on his television, with his wee feet at the end of the bed. He's sitting in bed just watching me on the telly. And I thought, oh no, if I've in this rang here, I'm going to get dug up for it. My deepest condolences to his family and to his friends. There's a lovely article by Alex Mooney of the Rangers Review. I would advise everybody to go and have a look at that. And my contacts tell me Alex made sure that there was no paywall in front of that article, so everybody in Rangers land could get to read it, and it's well worth a reading. For a few people, myself included, it filled in a few blanks about Robert's life. I'm gutted I never got to meet him. I should have. He was Frankie, who runs Jersnet. That's Frankie the gaffer on Jersnet. I think his season ticket was quite near Robert's. He'd met him a few times and that. But there's a lot of people doing really well by Robert's memory this last few days. I think his funeral is next week. I think the 13th. Clydebank Crematorium, and the family are wanting numbers if anybody wants to go along and attend that. But if you check out Alex Mooney's Twitter page or my Twitter page, I've retweeted the article that Alex put together about Robert, and you can find out details about that. I would advise you to read it. But yeah, the last time I spoke to him, he loved an argument. He loved the Bankies as well as Rangers. He loved Scotland. He's an SNP man, or certainly an independence voter with a few rammies about that. It's that kind of underlying health issues, and yeah, it's a bit. He'd fight you tooth and nail. It wasn't somebody you'd feel sorry for, Robert. It was good stuff when it came to a bit of an online debate. And I went to see Clydebank at Home Park. I went to see them at Yoker, where they're playing these days, against somebody. I can't remember what the game was. Was it a league game? Whatever. Anyway, I just posted a photograph, and he told me that he should have come along and said hello. I didn't realise he was there. He was going to see them. But a lot of Rangers folk would meet Robert. He loved a punt. Always tell you details of his bets, and he loved his grub as well. I would read Alex's article about him. It's absolutely beautiful. And the last time I spoke to him online, it was, of course, that's the whole thing with modern friendship. So much of it is online. I was telling him there was no way he'd never heard of the Beastie Boys. A few weeks before, I had put up a thing. It was Danny Trejo, Trejo from Heat, my favourite movie. He was on Saturday Kitchen. Is it Saturday Kitchen? I'm thinking of the BBC, these foodie programmes they have in the morning, cookery programmes with blokes and guests and things like that. And a Saturday morning on mainstream telly, and I was just sitting there, and I'd never watched this program. I've never watched this before, and the first time I watch it, it's Danny Trejo. For Heat, it was meant to be. And he gets in touch going, there's no way, I don't believe you haven't watched an episode of Saturday Kitchen before. I said, oh, I just haven't. I like eating food, but I don't know anything about food. You know what I mean? I just like eating fatty stuff. I don't really know anything about cooking or that. But he wasn't having it. And then a few weeks later, excuse me, I saw him telling somebody that he'd never heard of the Beastie Boys. I'd never heard of the Beastie. I'm like, Robert, no, how you saying, didn't believe me about no seeing Saturday Kitchen? I don't believe you've never heard of the Beastie Boys. You're at it, whatever. But a real shame, Robert, a real heartbreaker, and my condolences to all his friends and family. And folks, enjoy the game tomorrow. Enjoy Rangers against Queen's Park in the original Glasgow derby. Cheers.